Welcome to the Virtual Concert Hall's live show. Today's theme is how music continues to unite us. And I think today's broadcast is going to be a lot about that. And it's a real pleasure to bring on a composer as well as a Sound Espressivo competition judge to talk about this, their newest album together. And it's not often we get a chance to interview a composer on this broadcast. So I'm very excited to bring on Donna Weng Friedman and Stefania de Kenessey. Hello and welcome to the Virtual Concert Hall's live show. My name is Chris Au and I am Sound Espressivo's Global Competitions judge, co-host and social media manager. My first guest today is Donna Weng Friedman, and she's been doing a lot of amazing projects which I'm very excited to talk to you about. Award-winning pianist Donna Weng Friedman enjoys a varied career as a soloist, chamber musician, teacher, producer, curator, and app developer. In collaboration with WQXR, she created and produced Heritage and Harmony, a virtual concert series in celebration of Asian Pacific Heritage Month. She is the co-creator and co-host of Her Music, Her Story, a mini-series on WQXR, as well as a concert series that shines a light on the stories and music of women composers, past and present. She was a guest speaker on TEDx Santa Barbara series Making Waves, Conversations with Influencers and Disruptors, and was a featured artist on the National Women's History Museum series Sundays at Home, honoring women whose activism and talents serve to inspire others. Next spring, Ms. Weng Friedman will launch a new education program in collaboration with the National Women's History Museum, featuring leading female BIPOC role models in the arts. The virtual series is called Heritage and Harmony, Her Art, Her Choice, and is dedicated to inspiring and empowering school-age girls of color to find their true voice. Ms. Weng Friedman has performed in concert halls worldwide and appeared as soloist with major symphony orchestras throughout Europe, China, and the US. And you might recognize her because we recently, less than 24 hours ago, just interviewed Donna with Kim Sherman, who was a composer that she's featuring in an album of hers. What's particularly inspiring about her is her strong desire to make things happen, and I really love that. Donna, welcome to the show.
So nice to see you again, Chris, and thanks for having me back.
So today, we're featuring the music of Stefania de Kenessey, and she is someone you've collaborated with for 19 works on this new solo album, right?
Yes, that's right.
Wonderful. And I'm going to bring her on to the show. It's my pleasure to introduce composer Stefania de Kenessey, who works in a wide variety of genres, from opera to vocal to solo and chamber music, with performances ranging from Carnegie Hall to Joe's Pub. In her radical operatic reimagining of Tom Wolfe's classic novel The Bonfire of the Vanities in 2015, she created a new leading role for a black female attorney and updated the story of greed and corruption to the collapse of the New York Stock Exchange. Described as caustically witty by the Financial Times, it was recently released by House of Film with permission from Warner Brothers. Her recent Unorthodox in 2020, a klezmer-inspired electronic score modeled on the Emmy-nominated Netflix series was commissioned by the all-female Ariel Rivka Dance Company, which Donna is also the artistic advisor of. The piece has been screened and performed live in cities from New York to Istanbul. She composed Microvids, which is something we're talking about today, a series of 19 miniatures for piano students of all ages during the pandemic lockdown. Honoring Bela Bartok, each etude highlights a different pianistic technique or challenge through tuneful, fun music. The set is receiving its premiere in performances by the superb pianist Donna Weng Friedman, who also recorded the work in its entirety. It's a pleasure to have you today. Thank you for joining us, Stefania.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So the both of you have a lot of things in common. One of which is, as you can hear from the fire engines, that you both live in New York. Have you always lived in New York, Stefania? Are you from New York?
I was born in Budapest, but I grew up in New York, so I'm kind of a New Yorker.
And so you're used to the engines, the fires, sirens, and everything.
Sorry, that's life in New York.
That's totally okay. Donna, have you always been in New York as well?
Yes, I'm a diehard New Yorker, and I literally can't sleep without these fire engines and the motorcycles that come crossing, the park every single night at 3 a.m.
Wow, that's incredible. The thing I really want to start with today is a composer who you're both very familiar with, and I think also on personal terms, Milton Babbitt. Stefania, I know that he was one who wooed you to go study with him in Princeton, and I know, Donna, you also worked with him in Princeton. Would you share with us, maybe Stefania first, like your relationship with him and how you've come to not only admire, but he has formed the way you compose today?
He was a marvelous teacher for me because he was literally the only one who always let me write music of the sort that I wanted to write. And whenever I brought him things for our composition lessons, he would simply look at it and say, oh, does this work? Does this make sense? Is the transition too slow or too fast? He would always look at the music on its own terms, and he never asked me to start writing 12-tone music. So that was a real gift to me, and I never wanted to. And when I got accepted to Princeton, they kept asking me to come and making me more and more offers. So I finally went, and I had my interview with him, this prior to going to grad school there. And I said, why would I come to Princeton? I'm not interested in 12-tone music. I'm not interested in computer-generated music. It's unlikely I'm going to change my mind in the next year or two. Why should I come to Princeton? He said, for a couple of reasons. One, I think you're very talented. Two, you would be surprised, we spend as much time talking about Mozart as we do about Schoenberg. And three, if you come here, I'll take you under my wing. And he kept his word.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So that's how I wound up at Princeton.
How long did you spend with him? How many years were you with him at Princeton?
Well, I started teaching part-time, as soon as I got my master's. So it took me really 7 years to really get my degree. So I had lessons with him on and off. I was in residence in Princeton for about 3 years, I guess. And then I would see him in his office at Juilliard, which Juilliard's not supposed to know, but but it was a little closer to where I was, so I kept seeing him. Of course,
you're in New York, of course. Yeah. And Donna, would you want to share your experience and your time with Milton as well?
Oh, it was quite different. I'm not a composer. I was never in any of his composition classes, not individual. I did take several of his classes, including some graduates. I was at Princeton for undergraduate, and I took 1 or 2 graduate courses, and I was lost. He spoke so fast, and a lot of what he said just went right over my head. But, I did learn a lot, from actually after classes, we would spend some time talking about what happened in the classroom, but we really bonded over our mutual love for Chinese food. So we would talk about that, and when I went to Chinatown, I would bring back this certain pastry that he really loved very much. And we became very good friends, and he came to all of my concerts at Princeton. I was actually the first performance major ever there, because they just didn't have anything back then. Now, for instance, music department is unbelievable. But back then it was, just beginning. And so after a couple of years, I think I'd already graduated Princeton, we met for lunch, and he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm getting ready to go on a tour of China. I was going to perform with the Shanghai Symphony and Beijing and do a bunch of solo recitals. And he said, oh, it'd be great if you played one of my pieces there. I said, okay, sure, let me know what, And then I didn't hear from him for a while, and about 3 or 2 weeks before I was getting ready to leave, I received this, manila envelope. We didn't have email back then, it was snail mail, and I opened it up. It was from Milton Babbitt, and it was one sheet of paper, and it said, scribbled on it, for Donna, and love Milton. And it was a piano piece. And I looked at it, and I stared at it. I literally tried to turn it upside down because I actually did not understand what this was. I was too young and foolish to just pick up the phone and call him and say, thank you so much for this. This is such an honor, but I have no idea how to play this. Instead, like the immature young pianist that I was, I just set it aside. And then I kept preparing my programs, and I went to China, and I came back, and, we got together a couple times after that, and then lost touch a little bit. And I never mentioned that to him because I was embarrassed. Mm-hmm. I was just truly embarrassed that I didn't know how to make, any sense of that piece that he wrote for me. And then I moved a couple of times and got married, had kids, traveled a lot, had kids. Kids have a lot of stuff. Yes. And I'm ashamed to say that I have no idea where that precious piece of paper is. I actually spent a couple of months during the pandemic going through all my music, really looking for that. And Milton, wherever you are, forgive me. And if you can show me a sign as to where it could be, I'd appreciate it.
I still think you're going to find it someplace when you're not looking.
Yeah,
maybe,
exactly. You
maybe.
least expect it.
But what this is really, to me, what's so important is that, back then, I was studying with him in the 80s. We were friends back then. Atonal music was all the rage,
Mm-hmm.
and that was what was expected of composers. So, when Stefania, stood her ground and Milton supported her, to creating tonal, beautiful music, that took a lot of courage.
It was unusual. It was very unusual.
It was unusual. And
both for him and for me, yes, on both of our parts.
And I can only assume that it's certainly not the norm and not fully accepted back then, and not really expected in the concert halls from a living composer. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. No, it was completely off the grid to be writing music that was so tonal and so old-fashioned, quote-unquote old-fashioned, which is partly why I put together this humorously named Derriere Garde Association, which was meant to be obviously, funny. But the idea in it was to have a union of poets and playwrights and painters and musicians, whoever wanted to participate, who were doing work that what we thought of as cutting edge, because obviously we are still writing music and we are not dead, and we're not trying to simply imitate the past, but we're also trying to use elements from the past. And it seems to me quite possible to write new music that's different, that still has melody and harmony and rhythm. It does not have to be 12 tone or completely organized or whatever. So I think it's quite doable, and the corollary exists in painting. It's possible to do figurative painting that is representational. It's not just a copy of an Ingres or a Rembrandt. So the Derriere Garde, we had a lot of fun, me and my buddies.
Yeah, I find what it takes to be innovative sometimes isn't necessary to just continue to break things apart and to make it more confusing for people who are trying to access this music. I think what you're doing with I read somewhere in my research that you're learning to use Logic Pro and to incorporate a lot of technological electronic sounds in the way that you compose, or at least have these peripheral. And yesterday, Kim, the composer we featured, was using the loop machine to try to get inspiration and to use that as a way to, and I think that's a way what we can go into where the music can still be original and innovative, but it retains some of the, I guess, the artistic integrity that you want without having to imitate someone you probably wouldn't want to compose like.
Well, there's no reason why certain techniques, I think of it as really techniques from the past, can't be rejuvenated. You don't have to get rid of all of those historically sanctioned techniques. You just have to figure out new ways to use them. Right? So, and that's eminently doable. It's just hard.
So with that, actually, go on, Donna, please.
No, but what's important is for our audiences to now understand that, tonal music is great. I think for a long time, I think people were scared of new music because they associated it with the atonal stuff that was so difficult to listen to.
Right.
But right now, I think everything is accepted now. I think that what's important is for the audiences, the listening audiences, to understand that new music is not necessarily dissonant, atonal, but it has rhythm, it has melody, it's got lush harmonies. And so, don't shy away from new music just because of what, people believe to be unattainable, ununderstandable from previous decades.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So with that, Donna, would you like to introduce the first clip that we're going to play today? It's from the Microvids album, and it's titled Pure Joy. Would you like to give us a little bit of a blurb or introduction to this?
Sure. So Stefania wrote Microvids, 19 short pieces, 19 for COVID-19. She wrote these charming pieces during the pandemic. And for me, I'm just going to speak from my point of view what these pieces have meant to me, and I enjoy playing them from start to finish, from 1st to the 19th, because to me it's like an evolution of feelings and little moments in time during the 19 months during the pandemic that maybe I have felt, friends have felt, people that we have all, spoken to have felt and experienced. And not all of it is, dreary and upsetting, because I think we've all had, moments of lightness in it. The first piece that you're going to hear today is actually called Pure Joy. It comes a little towards the end of the 19 pieces. And to me, it was at the time when, personally, I thought things were over. It was the first time when I got to see my kids again after not seeing them for so long. It was after my whole family, recovered from having coronavirus. And it was pure joy. And that's what I felt the minute I saw this piece. In fact, I think I helped name it, didn't I, Stefania? Yeah. Right? Because it really just made me smile in a way, not like, jumping up for joy, like laughing, but a tender, something so deep and so moving. And so I hope you all enjoy Pure Joy by Stefania de Kenessey.
Wonderful. Let's hear that. It's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Thank you. Well, Donna plays these pieces so beautifully. I mean, I have to tell you more than once, she's brought tears to my eyes. So it's rare that happens, that you get a performance that's so superb that it brings out all the nuances that you could have possibly imagined in your head. And, I play piano, but I'm not a pianist, so I can't actually play the piece as well as she can. And it's just heaven for me to listen to her. It really is.
You're so sweet, Stefania. Composing, I'm not a composer. I never have been. I've always wanted to be, but forget it. I have to imagine that writing a piece, such a short piece, and being able to express so much, that has to be the most difficult thing. but I think it's probably one of the most important things. Every time I see a movie that I think is too long, editing, a book, editing. But to be able to say exactly what you want to say in a page like that.
Well, I'd never done it before. Like I said, I've never written miniatures before. So and one of the things I'm trying to do is with each piece that I create to do something that I haven't done before. Always push the frontier a little bit for myself compositionally. And now it doesn't mean doing wild, crazy things or writing music that nobody wants to hear. That's not what I mean by pushing the envelope.
Right.
But for me, pushing the envelope is writing 50-second piece that actually says something, that communicates something deep and meaningful, and doesn't overstay its welcome. So
would you mind then, Stefania, talking a little bit about the genesis of these 19 pieces and how you came up with them? Were they written in a space of a month or two, or were they spread out throughout the time we were kind of all locked down in the pandemic?
No, we were all locked down during the pandemic, and I wrote them in 2 days. I just got this idea that sometimes you get these bursts of activity, and the honest truth is, at the very beginning of the pandemic, for about 2 months, I just couldn't write music at all. I felt so depressed. I mean, it was just horrendous. And then I came back and started to find joy in writing music. And I was also thinking about all the people who were stuck at home, possibly with their pianos, perhaps practicing more or approaching their piano more because they had more time and were locked in with it. And I also remember, I used to spend a lot of time with Bela Bartok's Microcosmos, which I loved as a kid. But they're not easy pieces. They're very admirable, but they can be thorny. And I thought, wait, maybe I could do something that's born out of the pandemic and like the Microcosmos, but still with beautiful melodies and sort of more contemporary sounding. And that was kind of the genesis of the work.
Wow, and I know from our pre-chat that you didn't name them. It was sort of a collaboration with Donna. And I don't actually have the list of all 19 names, but what are the names, I guess, that came to mind? Maybe Donna, you can talk a little about this because you collaborated with it. How did you play them first, and then you thought, oh, this sounds like this, or was it just from a conversation the both of you had together?
Well, I think Stefania basically, she had numbered all of them, and basically all I said to her was, you can't have numbers. You need to have a title. It could be anything that's just fun and charming. And she came up with some wonderful ones. I mean, I think that we did discuss a couple of them.
No, you
together.
changed a couple. Yeah,
I changed.
I don't remember which ones, but you did. Yeah. No, but they're all for the better. I just didn't give them titles initially because there's so much in music that can't be said in words. So the easy way out is just to say, oh, I'm not going to worry about the words, right? But she was also correct because the words give you a way to enter the spirit of the piece. They don't encapsulate the music, they don't explain it away, but they give you an entry point. So they've turned out to be very useful. And once I got into the spirit of naming them, it came quite easily. But it took a little bit of prodding from Donna, for which I'm very grateful.
Well, we've been friends for decades, so I can say things like
Did you meet at Princeton? Was Princeton a common denominator for you meeting, or was it just outside of it?
Outside of it. We had a mutual friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, did we meet? I don't remember if we met at Princeton or not.
No, not at Princeton.
But not at all,
because there's a lot of common factors. You had both Milton, Princeton. Now you both live in New York.
Yeah. Well, she's she's a great pianist. I just want to keep working with her.
Feelings
Watch
mutual.
out, Donna.
That's fine with me.
So Donna, I want to show some little pictures from your Instagram, mainly because I want to show how I would love for you to share how you recorded this piece on a beautiful Fazioli concert grand, but also with some dances. How did that all come about?
Well, again, the dancers are from Ariel Rivka Dance. And this is also my pandemic moment because I got to know them really because of Stefania. I think she told me that Ariel Rivka Dance was going to perform. This is in August during the summer when things started opening up. And she said they were going to perform some of her music, dances to her music. And I was so excited. You know, I hadn't gone to a live performance in, a year and a half. So, my husband and I went, and we invited 2 friends. And I just fell in love. I mean, it was the first live performance for us. It was on the rooftop of a building in Manhattan. It was a perfectly gorgeous evening. And then, this dance group, all-female dance group, they're extraordinary. They have a wonderful choreographer who is the artistic director, Ariel Grossman. And they did a couple of Stefania's pieces, and the one that, of course, I remember the most was Unorthodox. That is just a knockout. And I was in seventh heaven. I was actually so moved that I was crying, for so many reasons. And
see, we just make each other cry.
Yeah, we do.
Moral of the story.
Yeah. So right then and there, Stefania introduced me to Ariel Grossman, and I said, we got to do something. I want to do something. My whole thing also, like Stefania, I want to, I love performing, I love playing chamber music and solo piano, but I want to always do something different. I want to expand, my performance and try as many different things as possible. And I've never performed with dancers. And so with microvids, this, gave me this perfect opportunity. I said to Stefania when we were talking about doing the recording, and I said, maybe we can get one dancer to the session, if there's room enough, and just like move to the music, improvise, and so we started figuring this out. And we talked to Ariel, and they all thought it was a great idea. So 3 of their dancers, they're new dancers, in fact, right?
Yes.
Joined us at the end of we recorded the piano solo. And then they came in and they did their thing, and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, they did a great job. It was.
So are any of these pieces that we have to play today, were they danced to, and will we get to see the video and everything together at some point? Or is that something that's more of a performance thing on the day?
They have not been edited yet, so we don't have them ready for you today, but they will be available. And of course, Ariel Grossman has now heard some of these excerpts, and now she's saying that she may want to choreograph the entire set. So things are always fluid and evolving. Yes, exactly.
That's wonderful.
Because this was just improv on the part of the dancers. So.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
No, I can't wait to see all 19 in a video form or something like that.
I think
if
it'll
she's
come
interested
soon.
That's wonderful. So I'm assuming that on the day all 19 were improvised too. So when you performed it, Donna?
Well, when they do the 19, I believe that they will be choreographed.
Okay, but this was just 3 pieces, or how many
We
pieces?
just chose 3.
Yes, 3 pieces.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
One of them was Pure Joy. That was one of them, and then the other 2 are not the ones that we're going to be sharing today. But
I can imagine it with Pure Joy already. It sounds really great. So with that, let's talk about the second clip, which is Dream Away. And Stefania, maybe you could introduce it this time.
Sure, I'd be happy to. This is the one which explicitly quotes Bela Bartok. I've always loved the opening of the viola concerto, but I've always loved literally just the opening. So I thought, can I just steal that and make it my own? And as it turns out, it's a very jazzy kind of opening gesture. And I transposed it to C major for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure. But I think it works the way it does. So it really is, that is the one that's clearly an homage to Bela Bartok. And I think I'm allowed to use just those few notes without infringing on copyrights, right?
No, I think you're fine.
So that's the story behind.
You've given credit for it. So
yes,
I think
no.
okay.
When I steal, I acknowledge the theft. So.
Thank you. So let's hear some of that. That was wonderful. Wow. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed that.
Thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful playing, Donna. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to say that the 19 pieces, they're like, they each have their own personality, different style. And that's what I think is so wonderful. You know, that one is very jazzy, and you'll hear the last piece later on. It's, again, very different. And I think that's what makes it so interesting and I think very exciting, because you can't, when you hear all 19 in a row, you can't even know what's going to come next. You know, it's like a little surprise. But it tells a story. So, anyway.
I love that. It's like going to a Japanese restaurant for an omakase, and you have
That's
an
right.
18 course, and you're not really sure what's coming next, but you know it's going to be good. I'd like to talk a little bit about, because both of you, both the composers we're featuring yesterday and today, composed mainly a lot of tonal music, and I want to talk about the fact that, you know, tonal music these days is widely accepted. You know, you see it in movies, you see it in films. I think what's happening a lot of the time is that because of the multiculturalism of our society and meshing of cultures, it's kind of broadened the possibilities and the diversity of the music we can listen to and hear. But at the same time, we don't really know a lot about certain genres. For example, you know, classical is delegated, Mozart, Beethoven, but there's so much more to it than just that. And I think even with jazz, there's so many different subcategories and subgenres of rock. And so when you talk about tonal music, sometimes what happens is, well, with new music, is a lot of people feel like it's 12 tone. They don't really see it as beautiful tonal music, which we hear from people like Hans Zimmer or John Williams. Stefania, do you kind of struggle with trying to define new music to others, or trying to tell, especially your students at the new college, I believe, what to compose these days, or how to kind of put this the right music for today's society?
I mean, it's a big challenge, actually, because unlike other times, we live in a world where we have available to us easily 1,000 different musical styles or genres.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, the amount of information we have is just unthinkable 500 years ago in any place, right? So you have to be able to sort of synthesize all of that and make it your own, and that's very, very difficult to do. But what I tell my students always is that for me, classical music has a very simple definition. It's a kind of music in which both the emotions and beauty and intellectual interest intertwine in kind of even measures. So it's both music that's interesting cognitively, it's something you want to listen to actively, but it is also beautiful and emotionally moving. And there are musics that, you know, take that pendulum to different degrees. And I would argue, and you know, I would have said this to Milton, that Milton Babbitt's music is stupendously complex and food for thought. It's really absolutely rich in that way. But it is not beautiful to listen to in a much more old-fashioned sense of that word. And for me, the best of classical music, Bach does that. It's gorgeous on a first listening, but it also asks you to listen and to come back and listen to it again. And that's how you do that. That's entirely up to the student, entirely up to the individual person, to their cultural background, to their loves. What is it that you love in music? But I always try to encourage people to write music that is both beautiful and moving, but also interesting. But not to, right? To keep those things in balance. And that's very, of course, that's very difficult, and it's an individual choice. So there's nothing, you can't dictate that. In that sense, you can't teach composition. You can teach techniques of composing, but you can't actually teach composition. You can't teach a person how to be themselves.
No.
Right?
But you can help them and guide them along that process of discovering themselves.
Yes. That's exactly what you do. Right.
And as a teacher, how do you, you could maybe it's a bit more of a practical question, and it's very specific for each individual composer that you and each student you get. But how would you say, help and guide them to discover themselves, so to speak, or is it through exploration of many different possibilities, or just asking them to go and explore more of these possibilities and try new things? I know one of the assignments you give is to ask your students to do a technique that has never been done before. Find something that has never been done before and just do it. Is that part of the process?
Yes, well, I mean, in my 20th century music class, that's a very cruel assignment, but I take it with a sense of humor, is lead them through all the ways in which the 20th century has negated the past or explored or asked questions. And if you know all of those techniques, it's very, very difficult to come up with something that has never been done before if people have been doing, new things for 100 years, right?
Yeah.
That quest for novelty, I think, finally is misguided, because novelty for its own sake is insufficient, right? You want to do something that's novel, but it doesn't mean that everything you are doing is actually novel. And there are great, great minds before you who've existed. And if you can use some of their wisdom, some of their insight, I think you're going to be a better composer than if you just shut them out of your world. And so, for each student, I try to do kind of what Milton did to me, take whatever they bring me and talk about it on its own terms. And then in my classes, I always just try to open people's minds to musics that they've never known. One of the last classes I taught, I don't remember what in my brain did this, but we were doing seventh chords, and I put Bach right next to Ma Rainey. And I remember one student said, I've never had a class where that happens, right? But if you're looking at seventh chords, that might make sense. Blues sevenths and other kinds of sevenths. And for people who know about Bach, they should know about Ma Rainey. And for people who only know Ma Rainey, they should know about Bach, right?
Yeah.
So I try to just open doors. Just keep opening doors. And whatever door you wish to walk through, that's your journey and your choice. But you should know what the doors exist.
And that goes for performance as well. It's so interesting that you chose those two, with Bach, because that's how I feel exactly about Bach. That's exactly what I feel. You have to have an open mind. Of course, you have to stay true to the composer, but you have to have an open mind, and you have to understand, all the connections. It's so complex. And of course, you want to bring your own interpretation and style to the performance. Every time I perform pieces by living composers, including Stefania and Kim, the scariest thing is playing their pieces for them the first time. Because it is. It just is. Yeah. Because, I can play Bach, and, what's he going to say? But I have very strong opinions on how I, hear a piece and how I perform a piece. I want to stay true to the composer, but there's no question that I have instant connections, not to all music. I don't perform everything that is given to me, but with microvids, instantly, I felt this connection, and I based most of it on what I believed Stefania was trying to say, and said it so beautifully. But I also felt, very strongly right away, as soon as I sat down and played each piece, I felt I had a lot of conviction to each piece, with my own interpretation. So I was relieved when Stefania, said it was okay, because it would have been very hard for me to change it, frankly. I mean, especially, when I first played it for you, I played it one after another. I didn't even want to talk to you in between.
Right.
I felt right. I didn't even look at you, because I really wanted to make that 19 movement piece tell the whole story.
Right, and they do build. I mean, it starts in D minor, ends in D minor. There is a trajectory there, absolutely. Yeah.
But there's a tempo. One of the things that's so incredible is the tempo connection from one to the next. Okay. I feel that so strongly also. So anyway.
Well, you're selling it really well, Donna. I cannot wait to hear it, especially in a set. And I hope I can be there in New York to hear the music, but also the dancing as well. And with that, I'd love to, let's play the third clip. Hey, that's what you think. Donna, would you like to introduce this final clip for us?
Well, to me, this was the end when we thought things were going to be great. And I love the title Stefania gave to it. That's what you think, because you know what? There's always a surprise. You never ever get what you expect in the end. And also, the only little thing that I added was the direction of playing it with attitude, because I thought that this piece had a whole lot of attitude, and that was the only way I could think of, expressing it. So Stefania very graciously put in my two cents worth. So, but anyway.
Thank you. Let's hear it. Oh, bravo. That was fantastic. What a way to end.
Yeah, each etude gets a little bit harder as it goes along. So
yeah, it does sound like it. Yeah. Oh, that's really great. So I hope that everyone really enjoyed this. Can you give us some? Maybe Donna, you can give us when is this CD out, and when can we get a hold of this? Where can we listen to it?
I think Stefania would be better to
okay,
answer
let's
that.
do that. Yes, that's Stefania.
I mean, as soon as possible. We just did the recording last week, so this is hot off the press, to say the least.
It's like a preview, yes.
It is very much a preview, yeah. So we're just starting the editing process now, but I hope to have it out within the next 2 weeks. I don't know, reasonably soon. So
yeah.
For the holidays.
For the holidays, yeah, definitely.
Exactly. And for everybody interested, Stefania's website is below. We have it there. We also, yes, thank you. We also, they're both involved with the Aerial Rivka Dance Company, and you can check out their work there and the website below as well. I would be amiss to, if I didn't mention the competition, Donna. You're going to be one of our judges, and hopefully we'll have people playing some of Stefania's music as well. This is just a wonderful piece, and because we have no time limits, you can actually play the whole 19 miniatures and still be fine. Wonderful. So I want to thank you both for being part of this broadcast today. It's been a real pleasure. It's so wonderful to see that, Donna, you're taking all these initiatives to get in touch with composers and to make music, to record it. And I think it's very inspiring to see that, because a lot of us musicians feel like, oh, there's already so much repertoire to learn. Why would I go play more music? Why do that? But I think seeing you do it and seeing your joy and your passion, I can really see why. Do you have something to say about, maybe young musicians who are like, oh, I haven't learned all these pieces by Rachmaninoff, Brahms, and Beethoven. Why would I play more music that I still have yet to learn?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there is so much great music out there from composers past and present. But you have to remember, Beethoven was a new composer one day, too. Back then, he was brand new. And we have the privilege now, because we have social media, internet, all these things that connect the world together. And we can Google, YouTube. You have at the tip of your fingertips the ability to look for incredible new music. That's really what I did for the entire pandemic. That's what kept me alive. It really did. And I was amazed, and I feel so strongly that for the young pianists today, especially because we have a huge repertoire, that just take a little time out of your day, every day, and listen to some new music. You don't have to love everything, but when you find a composer that you connect with, it's like magic.
Yeah.
And then reach out to the composer. Composers love hearing from musicians and artists. I think that this is what makes the world go round. It's collaboration. And you're going to be in for such a great treat.
I love that. That makes me so happy to hear. Yeah.
And also, Sound Espressivo is the only competition that, as Chris said, allows you to create any program you want. You don't have to play a piece with with 3 movements. You don't have to do a classical sonata and a large Chopin ballade. You don't have. It doesn't confine you in any way. You have the freedom to be creative in your programming. And that is what I love about this competition, because it's all about being creative, and it allows you, it gives you the luxury to find new composers, living composers, and music that you can play and love.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, go on, Stefania.
I was just going to say, I that's just so heartening to hear, and it's a great service that this competition is providing just by doing that. And the other thing I was just going to say is, the meat and potatoes of the repertoire is, of course, Chopin and Beethoven, and I love those composers as much as anyone, and I owe my everything that I do to them. But there are moments when you don't want to eat meat and potatoes. Maybe you want to have a vegan meal, or right, or Japanese
Absolutely.
food or whatever. So one of the things I would also encourage people to think of it is that you want to know the central core repertoire. But if you don't have other things adding to it, in some sense, you're losing some of the flavor, some of the richness that you need to be a great artist. So absolutely, meat and potatoes, you always do it, but it's not enough.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one of the best parts is, when you play music of a living composer, you get to have these interview-like broadcasts, and you get to talk to them and find out their past and their influences. And I think that's very inspiring to hear, because composers, just like us performers, I guess, are always influenced by Beethoven, Bach, and Rachmaninoff, and all the composers of the past as well. And so we have a lot in common, and I think being able to talk about it and come up with music that relates to us and our society and today, our world today, is really great. And to collaborate together, like you did, Donna, with dancers, and to put this all together, I think it's a beautiful show of what collaboration can look like in our world today. So with that, I want to say thank you once again to you, Stefania and Donna, for joining us today in this broadcast. We talked about the competition before, and I'm going to give you a quick shout out to the 5 really great features of our competition. We have no time limits for semi-finalists and finalists, and so this is a great way for competitors to showcase what they want to play, what kind of programs they want to do. We have no limitations on that, and so judges like myself and Donna will sit through all of it, and we'll listen to you. And the second thing is, we have no repertoire requirements of any sort. So I think this is really freeing, because this allows you to put together a program that you really want, or you want to experiment with. You want to try something out. Maybe you want to play all of Bartók's Macrocosmos and combine it with Stefania's 19 miniatures. Maybe you want to play those two together and see how it all links up. And I think the freedom to do that is essential in the discovery of who you are as a musician, as a performer, as someone who shares music with people. The third thing is that right after you play all that, you get immediate feedback from the jury members. And a lot of competitions, you don't hear from them for weeks and months, and by that time you've forgotten how you played, and you've forgotten how it felt, what kind of little things were bothering you, little things you were worried about. And so immediate feedback gives you that affirmation that maybe something you did was fantastic, some experiment, some risk you took was fantastic, but also some experimentation you could do later on, and some suggestions. So I really love that about it. And when Donna was my judge for last year's competition, I especially loved her comments and her feedback as well. The fourth thing is that we have over 100,000 US dollars in value for prizes. We don't give any cash prizes, and the reason for that is we want competitors and contestants to reach out to performance opportunities and scholarships and masterclasses and composers we have on board career coaching and to make use of the prizes, to really get the full value of them and not just take some money and, well, I'm not sure what you use with it, but maybe not as wisely as you would if you actually work with someone, collaborate with someone. And I think today's show is a fantastic example of what happens when you make a collaboration work and further. And they've known each other for many, many years and they continue to play and compose for one another. I think that's a really beautiful thing. The fifth thing is that everything, just like today's show, is live. So we don't accept, well, for the preliminary rounds, we can accept a recording, but everything else from there on, the semi-finals, finals, is all live, just like today. Mistakes and all. We want a virtual stage to be a live stage, not a recorded stage. We want it to be live so that musicians get the interaction they want, but also they get to the feeling of playing live, and maybe the little bit of anxiety that comes with it is probably going to turn into adrenaline that will then fuel the kind of music that you want to show the world. And with that, I also want to thank our guests today, Stefania and Donna. Thank you for being on the show. It's been such a great pleasure to have you. It's really wonderful to talk to you both.
Much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I also want to thank our board and the producer, Ante Borchers-Kudrich, for making this show possible. We also want to thank our sponsor, who is sponsoring 5 prizes, Fan for Me. And also History of Music is a great supporter of ours, broadcasting our shows onto their channel, and we want to thank them for that. And with that, we have more broadcasts coming up. So please like our page, be a part of this community, and we'll guarantee that you're going to get a lot out of it. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
No matter where you are or who you are, music connects us all. We started with a dream, but now we are paving the future. Welcome to the Sound Espressivo Global Competition. Fully virtual, yet bringing musicians closer together than ever before, now on a global scale. True live, inclusivity, diversity, connection, community, an extraordinary array of judges. Get noticed by companies all over the world. Prizes, scholarships, performance opportunities. Apply to be a part of the most exciting congregation of artists like nothing you've ever seen before. We guarantee quality and leave no musician behind. We can't wait to hear you on the virtual stage.